I would like to implement ranked voting.
Ranked choice voting for yes or no?
There's only two
I vote
choices.
yes, 1, 2, 3.
So I want that to
This whole
happen.
episode has been a disaster.
Look around the city and you'll see a multitude of stories waiting to be told, but you might not realize just how complex and layered the explanation is. Join our motley cast of urban dwellers and planners as we research, question, and sometimes fall deep down a rabbit hole. I'm Ellen.
I'm Matt.
I'm Tess. And I'm Zach.
And this is Multi-Story.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are going to not debate the mayoral election in New York City, but we're going to look specifically at one of the policy proposals of the Democratic nominee, Zohran Mamdani. I'm going to try to say that correctly throughout this episode. And that is the fare-free buses. We want to look at, is this policy actually feasible? Is it smart? Is it good policy? Is it bad policy? I think there is some disagreement on the group about this, so it might get a little spicy. So let's get into it. We're going to dig into the thing we know about, which is the urban aspects of the transportation. Because, all of us being New York experts living in France and central United States, we should be really good at this.
That did cross my mind as to how New York centric all of this is, but go on.
We do have free buses in Kansas City. We were one of the first ones to do this as a pilot, so we are qualified to react to that particular policy proposal, which is free buses. Is it good policy? Is it a good idea? Is it practical? Can it be done? And I say it's not good policy. So are we good?
You made this sound very lofty.
I don't know.
For me, this was like, oh, Matt disagrees with me on this. This is going to be a great time. That's as deep as my interest in this goes. I have no stake in the outcome of the mayor's race. I mean, everyone does, I guess, but I'm far more interested in picking apart the details of the transit policy. Yeah.
Okay, so the count so far is that Matt is against free fares. Tess, you are for free fares if you disagree with Matt, or you just disagree with Matt on principle?
Short answer, I'm for them. Long answer, it's complicated. That's the
is what we're here to discuss.
I have to always say on the one hand and on the other hand.
So Zach, what's your thought? For or against before we dig in?
I like riding buses. I don't like paying for things. It seems clear to me.
See, this is the problem. This is where campaign rhetoric gets you in trouble, because on surface, at that level of engagement, yeah, sounds great. And that wins elections. But the implications of that are a little more complicated, obviously. And I know you know that.
None of you And since none of you asked, my
convinced.
side is...
Yes. Ellen, what is your side?
Thank you. I think I'm for it, but again, I agree that it's very nuanced. I think it's going to be a situational yes, I'm for it.
So let's throw aside some foundational things, first of all.
Okay.
First, the mayor of New York City does not control the MTA, which is the transit agency. The mayor of New York City cannot unilaterally implement this policy. So that's the biggest thing. We're going to throw that aside about whether or not that makes it a bad policy or not. We're just going to debate the merits of the policy itself. But it is relevant about whether it is just campaign rhetoric if he can't even actually implement it. Does everyone agree? We just set that little pesky
we
detail
set that nugget aside
to the side.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm super curious. Why do you guys think this is a good idea?
Well, I feel like it's on you, Matt. Zach just said, bus is good, free things good, free bus good. Why don't you think so?
I could talk about this for a long time.
That's why we made a podcast.
The reason Kansas City did free buses is because Kansas City had so little ridership that fare collection wasn't even worth trying, because the revenue generated from fare collection was pretty much offset by the cost to implement the fares. It was exacerbated by the fact that the fare collection system was super antiquated, so they had to make a big capital investment to upgrade the fare systems, because it was the old feed dollars into your little thing, which legitimately slows down boarding because you've got this interaction. Modern fare collection doesn't really have that problem. With tap to board or pre-validated passes, you don't have that issue. The other main issue for me is that this creates kind of a devaluation death spiral. If the bus is free, quality can diminish with that lost revenue. I would much rather see investment in the service. I would rather have a great bus service worth paying for than a shitty free one, which is what we have in Kansas City.
That's where I have settled, is I think the free or not free is not what prompts people to ride buses. And Tess, you sent over a few articles that basically outline, go into much more depth there. But the reason people don't ride for the most part is because it doesn't actually work for their needs. And so I would rather it be like, if I am going to pay for it, then pay for more buses, pay for more frequency. So anyway, we can dive in. But what's your last? Is it your last thing, or are there more things? Keep going, Matt.
Oh, I could go on.
The well is bottomless, we know.
The other thing is, if you think about money being fungible, one of the articles that Tess shared, which we'll put in the comments or in the description, was about, well, it's kind of disingenuous to say this is like taking money out of the system because it's just changing the way it's, maybe it just moves into a different kind of tax funding. Fine. But then with that logic, money is fungible. I give you $400 million to invest in the transit system. Is the best investment of that $400 million to get rid of fares because you think it's going to either improve the speed of service or make it more accessible? Or is that $400 million better spent improving service? And then my last point is that you do need some demand management in a transit system, and price is the best thing we have in our system to do demand management. You don't want to basically undercut the subway, which is much more efficient on a per rider basis, to drive people to the bus because it's free. The bus is going to be slower. It's going to be crowded. It's going to seriously hurt the ridership experience and the speed of that service because you made it free and you upped the demand. You want to keep people on the subway. So unless you're willing to make it all free, you've got a serious demand imbalance problem, and you're pushing people to the bus when it's the mode that's least suited for that. Also in New York City's pilot, they found they weren't really getting new riders. They were getting ridership shift. So they were getting riders going more often or shifting from walking or biking, which we want people to do to help balance the demand on the bus. So it's really just making the bus worse, but at least it's free. That's my piece. I want to come back to. I'm going to go ahead and go now. No, I'm just kidding.
Does making it free?
Okay, bye.
I can see how it can become shittier because there's more people, so it's more crowded, and that's a bad experience. But is there less overall investment in the bus if you make it free?
I mean, that's where money is fungible, right?
Make up the gap in the revenue.
Right.
That's where Mamdani is saying, he would try to make up the funding from fares from other sources. I think his was a 2% tax on people who make more than $1 million. So kind of redistributing even who's paying for it. So to your question, Zach.
So Matt, this is my olive branch. I do agree that it is kind of insidious. There's all sorts of class issues tied in to transit and who pays for transit and how. The idea that you would pay for the higher volume, higher efficiency subway and not pay for the bus, as you say, would incent people to take the slower and smaller and less efficient mode. It's the same sort of issue we have in parking policy where you charge someone to park in a garage that no one can find and there's free parking on the street, right? It should be the other way around. What's the highest demand and the highest value should be valued highest, right? So in that sense, I think I'm on the same page that there is an issue with having it be paid and the bus be free. I also think it's kind of interesting, though, because in Kansas City, it was the inverse. For a while, the bus had a fare and the streetcar was free. And in that situation, it was like, oh, we're subsidizing a toy for tourists and wealthy downtown residents, while the people with the least means are the ones paying for their essential bus service, right? There was a class critique of the rail be free and the bus be paid. And now, when the proposal in New York is to have the rail be paid and the bus be free, there is also a class critique. In a way, there's no winning there. And my olive branch is that my pitch would be that all of the mass transit should be free. We should not be differentiating by class and user demographic on this. That's not where the benefit of free fares is found. You've mentioned demand management. In my mind, the merits of a fare-free system are not related to demand management and operational planning for the system and those sorts of things. So I am with you that it doesn't make sense to have the streetcar be free and pay for the bus, or to have the bus be free and pay for the subway. If our Venn diagrams overlap, that's where they overlap.
I thought that was that was mentioned in one of the articles you sent over, Tess, and I thought that was an interesting, like, a piece of this that I hadn't thought about, was that the subway is really, really efficient. And if you were to try to if like you're only thinking about an efficient way, or probably the most efficient way to move people around your city, that's the one you should be prioritizing. I think the thing that I wanted to kind of come back to or put a pin in too is that New York is one of the only places, like very few cities in the US have buses and metros. Like there aren't, like in Kansas City, we don't have a subway. We don't have something else. We have, if you're thinking of public transportation, you have overground things that are like affected by traffic. And so there is an argument of saying like, you have to get people on, or if you're truly thinking about moving people as efficiently as possible, you should be figuring out how to get more people onto the subway, how to make it more affordable, or how to make it more accessible, something that runs more frequently. I think that argument shifts, though, when you take it out of a metro that does not have a subway. So, like in Kansas City, we have free fares, but the buses don't serve people. They don't, like, someone who doesn't have to rely on the bus won't. Because there's, like, at that point, it feels like you're just sticking a stake in the ground and saying, look at me, prove a point, instead of using it because it's helpful in a lot of senses.
Well, but the people who someone's choice to ride is based, as you say, it's based on how useful it is to them and how easy it is to use. And we know what barriers are to use, and a fare collection system is a friction point that creates a barrier to use and lowers ridership. Cost is a barrier to use that lowers ridership. You have to be able to afford the bus to take it. And if you take it every day for work, that's a cost that adds up. If the critique of free fares is that the bus will be too crowded, then essentially you're saying that the problem with free fares is that it's too successful, right? Look at how much we've increased the ridership. What a disaster, right? But why do we have a transit system? It's to connect as many people to as many opportunities and destinations as possible. And if we can remove those points of friction, then we enable that. I think that's one of the big pitches for free transit, is that you're removing barriers to access. And by doing that, you're providing this to more people, and people who otherwise wouldn't be able to. They're able to make more trips. And by doing that, you're increasing the use of the system. And when you increase the use of the system, you increase all of the benefits that come from having a transit system. Now, I understand that the other pitch is that if with a lack of fare revenue, you can't provide quality service to the places where people want to go at the frequency that people need, that is also a barrier to use, a barrier to ridership, a barrier to opportunity, right? So I get the argument that people say, well, I would rather have the fares to invest in better service, and we can mitigate the friction points of a fare collection system by enhancing, by having a street with better infrastructure or dedicated lanes or longer buses or more frequent buses or more varied destinations. Those will also increase ridership. Those will also increase the benefits. That makes sense to me.
So this is where I think, like, if you the only thing you change about your system is that suddenly it's free and now your problem is overcrowding, then the fare was the only problem. And I don't think that's the case for most systems. So it's like, if you take away, it's like suddenly, now that it's free, I am able to ride the bus and it takes me where I want to go and I will be a repeat rider forever and ever. That implies that you probably have the system right, but I only wasn't riding it because I couldn't afford it or because there was a cheaper option somewhere else. Versus, I don't know, and maybe Matt or I don't know, any three of you might know the answer to this. Like, how did KC's ridership grow or change, I should say, with the free fares? Because I am really close to like an arterial bus line, but I don't want to, if I miss it, it's another 15, 20 minutes, no matter what. Even if it's on schedule, if it's not running late. And it's like, for the most part, they are running on time, but it's like 20 minutes is make or break. Like, I'm not leaving an extra hour in my schedule or like leaving an hour early just in case I miss a bus or a transfer.
And 20 minutes is as good as it gets in our system. That's good frequency for us. My argument was, and I could first of all, I could speak to, because I was on the board when we made the fare-free decision for streetcar, the reasons why we did that. I agree with the critique test that it doesn't really make sense. Those had different governance structures that were unlinked, and so our streetcar decision was kind of in a vacuum. But my argument always, Ellen, to your point, is that it's not the $2 that's an impediment for almost anyone,
Right.
To not ride the bus. It is the lack of reliability and frequency. And even if you do the math of a minimum wage worker, if you could reinvest that in service quality, that $2 is money well spent if the service is incrementally better. And I guess the only other point I'll add while I'm on my soapbox is getting rid of a fare makes ridership increases a bad thing instead of a good thing. Because when you increase ridership because of service quality or demand or other transportation planning initiatives, increasing your ridership actually increases your revenue, which is a good thing. But now we actually don't want to increase our ridership because it strains a system that has a fixed budget, because it's not actually increasing our revenue. This creates a potential death spiral as well. So you need those. I mean, I know, I
think every argument that you're making is around the financial operations of a transit system, and I just feel like that's the wrong place to be focused. The arguments for free fare are on the economic opportunity and the access and mobility freedom that it gives to people.
I'm with you 100%. I just live in the real world. We got to pay for this thing, right? Particularly in the United States.
Right, but
there's something you have to fund it somehow.
You do,
yeah.
But
go on.
You said you've been pitching this like free fares are not in a vacuum, and without the fare collection, there's these challenges to service, and we have to think about how we fund it. We're in the real world. What fares also mean in the real world is all of those who are least able to afford it, people whose housing costs are increasing, people who are facing challenges finding work, people whose proportion of household income that they need to spend on housing and transportation continues to increase all the time beyond the means with which they can support themselves and their families. Those are the people that we are leeching money from in order to provide this bus service. And with fare-free transit, all of those resources are instead reinvested in those communities, reinvested in those families. That. My pitch for fare-free transit is that fare-free transit is not about the bus. Fare-free transit is about reinvestment in the communities, right? And that we need a good quality bus, right? And everyone's like, how else are we going to pay for it? But if we think about what transit advocates who don't like fare-free transit are saying, they're like, we need fares because fares give us the revenue to operate a system we need. And for those with the most need, well, they can ride for free. I'd rather have an income scalable system where those who need financial assistance can ride for free and everyone else can pay. That's a more progressive way to provide this sort of system. But at that point, we're back to this arbitrary class distinction. We've created the most inefficient way to transfer wealth between those who can pay and those who can't, which is to do it through a box on a bus that you're driving through. And if that's what we're doing, then why are we not just creating a investment structure, a capital investment structure, and a financing structure, and a tax structure that progressively provides this public service that we need? It seems crazy to me.
And so kind of said a different way, taxes for the most part are percentage based off of your income. So if we just funded them in that way, as an example, if you funded it that way, you're going to get more money out of the people who have more money if you could just fund transportation through, for example, a tax or something that's already outside of this exact bus where you tap your card.
Right.
It's just it's a more efficient way of reinvesting. That's setting
aside all of the costs of fare collection itself, right? That's money that you can give back to people too, right? And
fair enforcement too.
In a previous episode, we looked at a project where they buried a road, and Zach asked, well, they wanted to get rid of the road, but it would have been a lot cheaper if they just got rid of it rather than burying it so that it was out of the way. I think this is the same sort of thing. Everyone is so stuck on this idea that we can never fund public transit in a rational way. Therefore, it must be funded through fares that are protected and segregated from other threats to transportation and funding. And therefore, if we have to do it through fares, Therefore, we have to build our system around fare collection. And therefore, we are going to do all of our transit planning based on fare collection and our investment in infrastructure around fare collection. I just feel like it's insane. I feel like we've totally missed the forest for the trees with how we're operating this.
But Tess, you know, the fares are a small portion of any transit system's funding, and that they do have fixed capital investment that is like baseline tax revenue. And the fares help flex, and I would argue help deal with that demand increase by creating a revenue that adjusts with demand. I kind of like the idea of a sort of a means-tested thing, because I don't think that poor New York City taxpayers should pay for me to ride for free around New York City when I'm visiting. But I get your point. I think the main thing, this is the classic like Matt and Tess debate, and it's the layers of pragmatism. Like, I'm trying to like do the system today, having worked in transit system governance. I'm like trying to make the system work, and you're like, well, the whole society got messed up priorities, which I don't disagree with. We're actually talking about a policy that they're wanting to implement, and short of like some sort of capitalistic revolution, which I'm sure maybe this is the kind of candidate could usher that in, and maybe this is like the first domino. I don't see us fundamentally restructuring like our capitalistic system to change the way we think about this.
I think we should experiment. Cities should be laboratories where we experiment with different ideas and policies. And the reason that we're so pessimistic about our ability to run a transit system without fares is because everything's so what is that word? Moribund?
Mm-hmm. Moribund?
Moribund.
Yeah, we can't try anything. So I think we should get in the habit of trying things and experiment, and it doesn't work out, we can go back. It's
gonna be hard to go back. And I don't disagree with you, but I also think you need a coalition. Like, you can't go it alone. Like, the MTA is a state agency. If we're going to do this, we need to reach a consensus that we should try this, and we should be aligned so we're not antagonizing each other in the way it works.
There's a little...
And there's an argument, too, of just, like, training people what to do or how to do it, too. I think that's why part of why the streetcar was free in Kansas City to begin with is it was this new thing. And so the free of it made it to where it's something that you can do and get used to in a setting that you're probably visiting. Because especially 10, 15 years ago when we were building it, it felt very much like a downtown pet project. Like, these people who live here, they just want this. And so getting it to where it's like not only accessible, but suddenly it's fun. And suddenly you understand that it's something you can do instead, that like prompted an actual mode shift within that part of Kansas City.
It's more than just a teaser too, Ellen, right? Like, the Kansas City streetcar is one of the few very successful recent U.S. streetcar examples. And part of the reason is that because a zero fare collection process allowed people to use it as an urban circulator, get on and off. They didn't have to think about it. People who hasn't used transit before were able to get on and use it. It was a no stress situation. You could use it multiple times in the evening, going back and forth to all your different destinations on the weekend. And if you were paying $2 each time, you had to do that. Most people wouldn't, right? And if we look at fare collecting, short distance, frequent stop, U.S. streetcars, a lot of them fail. That is a good U.S. example of a free fare system that was funded through a separate mechanism, and it worked well. Another one here where I am, the bus system, the regional bus system, is free in the summer. And the reason it's free in the summer is because the summer is when the roads are absolutely packed. And the region has to do whatever it can to get mode shift. And free buses are a way to get as many people as they can onto that bus so they're out of their car, so there's fewer cars.
Might I pause you and say that some of the articles that you yourself sent over, especially for New York, don't support that, because that's not the people who benefit from the free fare. The people who might drive instead of taking the bus especially are not bothered by the free fare or not. Like, they're not going to say, oh, it's free now, I will not drive anymore.
In New York, it did not, the pilots did not get mode shift, to your point. Yeah.
Right. The free fare doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like, the free fare doesn't do much if the system is broken, if you're not going to invest. But this is also part of what is in Mamdani's proposal, is to add dedicated bus lanes and to add more buses to the system. So that would actually, in combination, I think, with the free fare of it, of saying, don't worry about it, it's free, also, it will be better, can prompt someone who's maybe going a shorter distance or to actually get out of the car or the Uber in New York City, get some of those cars off the road.
I mean, we can debate the effectiveness of free fares for mode shift. My point with that is that the city chose to implement a free fare system because they had a higher goal for connecting people and improving air quality, etc. Right? Like that, again, I think if we're only talking about fares in terms of transit operations, then we've missed the point, right? The conversation about fare collection should be about community benefit. And if we're not looking at that holistically, then we're missing most of the benefits that come from a free fare system.
And like most things in my life, I feel like this is a problem that could be solved with really good marketing. Like part of it is going to be, right, like saying the reason the fares are free is that because we hope you'll write it. Hey, check it out. Like it's free now. Like making sure people understand that and understand why. But again, like the way that it is working, or it might be different or might benefit you or whoever else from like within this situation.
I think the transit app does a good job of that, to your point. I rode the bus more often when I was on the line that went to work because I wanted to be on that leaderboard.
The gamification really worked on you. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You get
But your
points.
point, Zach, is like the app made it really clear as to how you could get around on transit. It removed a hurdle. You're not relying on Google Maps and you're not wondering about, is this right? Is this right? Is that right? It's just like, here, this is a reliable source for your information about doing this particular thing.
Yeah.
Marketing.
Yeah. When I was first starting out, the parking at where I worked was $50 a month. But they'd also pay for your transit card, which was at the time $50 a month. And so I was saving $100 a month by taking the bus instead of driving. And for me, starting out at that time.
Yeah.
So the streetcar in Kansas City, a summertime free bus, I guess all of these are to say that even the 75% of the transit budget that already isn't fares, right? Like, I don't think these are utopian propositions. I don't think this is an ask to reform society. I think we already do this, but we've got this mental block around the role of fare collection and the operation of transit that is getting in the way of broader community benefits. If we could think about why we're providing the transit, and we could think about what it's doing for our communities, and we can use some of the tools that we're already using to emphasize that and enhance that, then I think we have an opportunity to have much more effective systems. And of course, all of this is said in a context where inflation and driver shortages and other things like United States transit systems are just in a total free fall, right? And it is challenging to say what are the success or not of these free fare situations when systems, free fare and with fare, are all in sort of a death spiral in the United States regardless, right? I do find it hard to make inferences about individual pilots and ridership trends and things like that when the other forces affecting transit operations are so much larger than the question of fare collection.
If we were thinking of charging every mode $2 per ride, how would that affect mode shift? Even if it's in your personal car, you are choosing to go from point A to point B, but suddenly, and similar to a congestion fee, right? If you want to come in here, it's $2. It doesn't matter if you're on the bus or if you're on the subway or if you're in your car or an Uber. Like, even if it isn't an Uber, it's like, here, $2 surcharge to get in here. Like, that, I think, would piss drivers off. I think maybe the thing we haven't talked about a lot on this is, like, the problem with a lot of transit systems is cars. But we'll leave that for a minute.
I love that you
mentioned
mentioned
that's my
congestion charges, because in New York short time with the congestion fee, where they added a friction to driving, which was purely cost, they dramatically drove mode shift and reduced the amount of vehicles, right? So we can look at that in the inverse for what we might expect for removing the cost friction on the bus. I think that's an absolute great example of the role that the cost alone plays in trip choice.
Maybe we need user fees for everything, and then you create a culture of user fees, and the most important user fee and the least affordable one would be the vehicle miles traveled of the automobiles, and then transit's super competitive. Then you can take that money and fund the virtuous option, which would be transit. But let's go bigger then. If we're trying to build utopia, we need to price cars better. beyond congestion pricing, which is a great start.
I guess I'm thinking it's almost, well, you can look at it that way as like the one way to do it is to just make it all free. But the other way I'm saying would be to make it all cost something.
So
a visible cost.
I think it would be useful to go a little bit deeper on the streetcar example because we've used it. I was on the board when we launched the system, and one of the things that protects it from my concerns about fare free and other modes is that it still has a value capture mechanism. So increased ridership, we would be in a death spiral if we were on like a fixed allocation that was at the whims of legislative body that rolls over. And that's another argument we could get into, but I feel like it speaks for itself. Like you're super at risk when it's at the discretion. I mean, we talked about ONSI and how volatile that political situation can be when 27 votes.
But even New York? New York,
the state government.
The congestion fee got rolled back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the state government controls it. It could be the whims of who's in power there. But the reason this Kansas City streetcar wasn't a cautionary tale when the demand so far exceeded what we anticipated is because it's paid for by the properties within the district. And so increased economic activity beyond what we anticipated because of the vibrancy of the streetcar and other development increased the revenue to the system, which allowed the system to make investments like adding additional capacity, running additional cars during peak periods. Those would not be possible if we were on a fixed amount, and we wouldn't be able to be responsive to the increases in ridership. But because we have a value capture system, which maybe, to your point, Tess, is just
right.
maybe we need to be more imaginative.
Thank you for describing a progressive taxing structure that moved wealth from those with the most means in order to enhance the access to opportunity for those who needed it. Perfect.
So if we could put a TDD in place that is targeted enough that it makes sense and it feels just to the people that are investing in it in the way that we did in Kansas City, then I'm all for it.
I think it's just one tool in a large toolbox of many financing structures. We've left every rock unturned and we're out of ideas.
But as we learned in the last episode, a TDD is as American as it can be. It's existed before in New Amsterdam.
Yes,
this isn't
variant
new.
Of a special fence district.
Yeah.
That's right. There's a wall. It's supposed to be a wall.
Wall district.
Yeah.
A glorified wall
If
district.
they made everyone pay for every stone when they walked on that first paved street in New Amsterdam,
right.
Probably everyone would have moved away.
So I want to offer an olive branch back to Tess.
Okay.
One of my biggest
I gave it to you and now you're giving it back to me. Okay.
I'm giving you a freshly cut piece of olive branch.
Okay.
I'm not regifting olive branches. I think one of the biggest challenges, and we've talked about this before, especially in the United States, is a lack of imagination. And that goes for how our cities could be designed differently, how we could live differently, how we could travel differently. That criticism does not stop, and how we could fund things that are important to us. So I'll cop to maybe being too much inside the paradigm. I'll also say that perhaps this is really just an Overton window expanding exercise for the mayoral campaign in New York City. Maybe it's not a realistic thing, but we're talking about it, and that's good. I think you need to actually come up with a policy that can work, and you have to explain details and do the hard stuff and not just say things that like sound good in campaigns. Marketing, Ellen says. But there is value in this conversation. And I'm more on a practical, I need to run service right now kind of level. And I admire and respect the point you're making. And I think there's a middle ground or a solution with the right imagination.
So Zach, you were the most open-minded. Your thoughts on this were the least firm coming into it. Where have we left you?
I feel like Matt made a lot of good points that I had not considered before, a very surface level understanding of this. And I think the most compelling point for me personally, thinking to myself and running the bus, is that if I could pay some amount per month and have that bus service be like really good, like super awesome, I think that'd be worth it for me. But on the other hand,
that's where I'm at.
I still just don't like to pay for stuff, and I like to ride the bus. So it does sound good.
Do you care about paying for stuff if you just have to tap your phone and walk right by?
It depends. I mean, it depends. But yeah.
If you take the like visual and mental out of it, of
all the actual friction, right? You, like if you've used the Omni system, it's friction free basically.
If you could pay like a month pass, that would be ideal for me because you can use it as much as you want a month. I hate having every single time I get on or off having to make that decision and like, oh, am I going to write it twice? Oh, I could save $2 if I don't write it twice. And it's like, what am I doing? $2 doesn't matter to me, but it does.
But it does. That's where though, This is once again communicated with good marketing, but also in systems that, like, I think New York, London, I think most of the big systems, as long as you're paying with the same method every time, it'll stop you at like a week pass. Once you hit the same amount of money as a week or a month or whatever, it'll just be like, okay, you're good after this. That's how it was in London. I'm pretty sure that's what New York did. But I even remember seeing the last time I was in New York, I think it was new that was happening. And so they had like all over the subway, it's like, hey, don't forget, like you can just start tapping and we'll take care of this for you. If you hit that threshold where it makes more sense, you're good. You're covered. Don't worry.
And
Please
anticipating, there is a concern with those like tap to pay solutions about equity for folks that are unbanked, don't have access to payment cards. That's a gap that we need to address because it's a public service. You need to make those things available through other means. And there are payment cards and solutions for that, but we can't ignore that as a challenge when we move to these systems.
And you've created a hurdle to get the card.
There's two different frictions. The first friction is the fare collection process. And for that, tap to pay is great, especially when you can just use your credit card or something like you can in London, where you don't even need a transit card. You just tap it with a card you already use. You use it everywhere. Everything works. It's great. The other friction is the cost. Like, tap to pay is great if you're not struggling to put food on your table. Tap to pay doesn't help solve those problems. Tap to pay doesn't help the community where 30% of the residents don't have access to an automobile but still need to get to work and the doctor's office and have to find a way to pay for transit to get there. That's the opportunity that's presented with the zero fare system, is being able to reinvest those residents' resources into their own communities and recognize that how we connect people to different places in our cities and to different opportunities in their lives is a public service that we should all support.
Agreed. As long as you can give them good service, because I would always argue that $2 is not the issue. It's the quality of the service and the reliability of the service that they are forced to be second-class citizens, to waste their time, to have unpredictability. And that's the fundamental tension here, right? Can we do this in a way that you can still deliver a quality of service worth paying for, even if you don't pay for it?
Right. If that fundamental issue is that if we are not collecting and protecting transit revenue through fare collection, then it wouldn't exist. To me, that is an important but separate conversation, right? If you were saying that the only reason we have transit is because we've coerced the people who can't live without it to pay for it while the rest of us pretend not to, and if everyone else had their way, we wouldn't do it at all, that is the problem to work on.
One other thing that I even hesitate to bring up, particularly because we've been talking for a bit, but there is a political aspect of this that was a challenge in Kansas City when we did Fare Free, of just like the rhetoric was difficult because people are like, we're subsidizing this service, but we're giving it away for free. And even like a nominal $2 can help quash that criticism that like people are paying for it as well, and they're sharing their load. It's kind of, a shallow, it's like, I'm not getting a rebate for paying for the school district I don't use. So it's a kind of a silly thing, like public goods are public goods. But
yeah, if where we're at is that schools and libraries shouldn't exist, then we've got bigger problems than transit fare collection.
We do. Okay, so parting thought. We are emperors of New York, this panel of 4 individuals, which, I vote for us. We have the votes right here. We can make the bus free. We've aired the concerns. I feel like I know where Tess and I are going to vote. So Ellen and Zach, make your final testimony and place your vote.
I would like to implement ranked voting.
Ranked choice voting for yes or no?
There's only 2
I vote
choices.
yes, 1, 2, 3.
I don't know that my answer has shifted too much. I guess if it's a firm yes, no, I am on the no, but that's where I kind of want, again, I want the ranked voting, because what I want is I want the investment in the system. So I want that to happen.
This whole episode has been a disaster.
I feel very unsure, but I vote yes, we should do free transit, if only just to try it. Just try it.
All right.
It could be a complete disaster. and they'll have to roll it back. But at least but it could be a
All
success.
right, Zach,
so.
we've successfully achieved total gridlock. It's the perfect conclusion to this transit conversation.
You know, we should do this like proper YouTube personality and say, settle the debate down in the comments. And don't accuse us of trying to, undermine any particular mayoral candidate. We're
That's true.
strictly looking at the benefits and drawbacks of this policy.
I will say, I guess I hope that it does happen because it seems like it has a lot of support and it is getting a lot of notice. It's like that was one of the key pillars that his campaign's running on. So I guess, yes, I would again, okay, fine. If there's a utopia situation, yeah, I think it should all be free.
Well,
I don't think we're there yet.
in
To
Utopia,
Matt's point, what's not where we live.
in
But
Utopia, we just appoint Tess as Holy Emperor, and she can do whatever she wants, and it'll be amazing.
Empress.
The problem is, we have this less than utopian
I know.
situation, particularly here in the United States, where we have to
I guess-
protect every funding source we can get because they're few and far between.
You say utopia, I say something
Yeah.
that is eminently doable that we could all choose to do and have the resources to do and yet don't.
I think that's also
God.
true. Anyway,
very true.
I guess we'll find out.
Go team. Good luck. Ride the bus. Mode shift. Yay.
Pay for it or don't. Doesn't matter.
Get in the comments.